welcome back to Kai Talks Combat. If you're new here, my name's Kai, and on this channel, I talk all things boxing and combat sports. If you haven't already, subscribe to the channel and smash that like button for me. Do it now because you might not want to at the end of the video. Just do it before you change your mind. Go on. Have you done it? Click it. Just click there and then the thumbs up button as well. Perfect. Thank you very much. It is very much appreciated. Slightly different video than usual today. This will be the first of what will hopefully become a regular series on the channel where you and I will sit down and talk about all the latest news and headlines in the world of boxing and MMA. Rather than me just making videos about one particular fight card or one particular fight or headline, we'll be covering various different topics all in one video. We'll still do those other videos where we cover particular fights, etc. But selfishly, this way I'll be able to cover more and it just makes it a little bit easier on the editing front as well, I'll be honest. Not sure what I'm going to call this just yet, if I'm going to call it anything. We have got a lot to talk about today, so without further ado and further waffle from me, let's talk about it. I want to start today by talking about Chris Eubank JR and who his next opponent is going to be. Eubank recently returned to the ring against Kamil Szeremeta on the undercard of Beterbiev vs Bivol, making his return to the ring after a one-year layoff and his Riyadh season debut. In the lead up to the fight, he was sticking it on every promoter and their mum and came to the weigh-in dressed in Saudi Arabian war-ready regalia, waving around a sword like a samurai. Regardless of what you think about him inside and outside of the ring, you have to give it to him. The man is a promotional genius. He just is. He certainly stole the limelight in the lead up to the card. Getting into the fight itself, he stopped Szeremeta in the 7th round of their contest, having dropped him once in the first, once in the second, and once already in the 7th. The ref waved it off. In the immediate aftermath, Conor Benn, who was sat ringside watching the fight, climbs through the ropes, and the two face off. Lots of pushing, lots of shoving, words said by both men. Neymar was even there. Eubank and his boy Neymar were just sticking it on Conor. Don't know why Neymar was there. But listen, he looked like he was ready to back his boy Eubank, man. He looked ready. So, everyone, myself included, thought that that would probably be the next fight for both men. To be honest, I thought that was pretty much a done deal. They'd already had an altercation at the Fighters Hotel during fight week, so I thought, you know what? This is cooking nicely. This is going to be the next fight for both men. But since then, things have gone a little bit quiet. At the time, there was a lot of talk from Eddie and Conor about an up-and-coming hearing with the British Boxing Board of Control into Conor's drug ban. I think that was due to take place sometime in October. But like I say, no news as of yet from Conor or Matchroom on what the decision of that was. Can Conor fight in the UK? Can he not? Who knows? Would that fight even take place in the UK? Or would that be a Riyadh season event? My guess is that will probably take place in Saudi if that does happen. I would absolutely love to see that in London. I think that could sell out Wembley easily. If not, it could absolutely sell out White Hart Lane or somewhere like that. And I, for one, would be buying a ticket. Take my money, I'm there. But I reckon, and understandably so, with both men wanting a fairly big payday for this one, and both men being able to generate a big payday for this one, given the history and their names out in Saudi, and our boy Turki Al-Sheikh saying that he wants to make the fight, I reckon it's probably going to take place in Saudi. Whilst I would be low-key gutted about that, equally, as long as the fight happens and I can watch it at home or somewhere, I'm happy. It's better than the alternative and the fight not happening. But Eubank has options outside of Ben, right? And it seems like he's exploring them. With news coming out recently that Canelo and Eubank are back in talks for a fight here in the UK. That, ladies and gentlemen, would be massive. And despite who I think would win that fight, I would be backing my fellow Brit in Eubank. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is a fight that would definitely sell out Wembley. And that would probably be the only matchup and the only opportunity where we would see Canelo fight in the UK. And Canelo seems to be considering a bit of a worldwide tour at the moment, doesn't he? With rumours circulating last month about Inoue and Canelo fighting on the same card out in Tokyo in Japan, which I know, of course, in the end didn't come to fruition, with Inoue fighting on December the 24th without Canelo featuring on the card. But at the moment, lots of speculation about some international fights for Canelo. And in my opinion, there's no smoke without fire. Maybe he's got some itchy feet. He wants to get a few more stamps in his passport. But imagine that. Canelo, Eubank Jr., Wembley Stadium. Do you know what? I don't even care about the undercard. Don't even need an undercard. Just take my money. Take it. I'm there. Who knows if it will actually happen. As Eddie Reynoso came out the other day, pissing on our bonfire a little bit, I'll be honest, by saying it's totally false. Eubank had his chance to fight Canelo in September, and the only thing he did was complicate the negotiations. When speaking to Fight Freaks Unite, we will not touch base with him again for a future fight. Whatever I tell you is always true. I don't like making statements, but what I declare is true. Yeah, so that's not looking too promising. So that's not looking too promising if our man Eddie Reynoso is to be believed. That could put a bit of a spanner in that taking place. But they have had negotiations and conversations about a potential fight in the past. So maybe that fight can happen. Who knows? We'll have to wait and see. At the moment, it seems like both of those fights, the Conor Benn and the Canelo fight, are kind of up in the air a little bit in terms of both fights having a few moving parts. But if I was a betting man, I reckon the next fight we see Eubank in is that Benn fight. I think it's the one that makes the most sense. And whilst I would absolutely love to see Canelo Eubank, I think the Eubank-Benn fight makes more sense, given the family history between the two fathers, and given that the previous fight was cancelled, and given these recent altercations between both men out in Saudi, I think it makes the most sense. I also feel like Canelo, being the face of boxing, or certainly one of them, just has so many potential opponent options at the moment. Outside of Benn and Canelo, of course, there's other fights there for Chris, like Hamza Shiraz, for example. I would love to see that fight. I think Hamza is just a monster at the middleweight division, I really do. But Eubank seems to be in a big fight only period of his career at the moment. And as much as Hamza is a serious contender and is really starting to build his name in the sport, I think the risk versus the reward for Eubank just isn't worth it. And if he loses to Shiraz, will he still have these big paydays that he's targeting in a Canelo and a Terence Crawford like he's previously mentioned, or Conor Benn? Maybe not. So in regards to what's next for Eubank, who knows, man? We'll have to wait and see. I'm just happy to have him back in the fight game because he's just a fantastic character, man. Next up, let's talk about Mike Tyson and Jake Paul, taking place in a couple of weeks' time on November the 15th. Being broadcast live on the streaming platform Netflix in the first boxing event of its kind. I'll be honest, I'm not a fan of the fight. I am a huge Mike Tyson fan, man. I think he is one of the greatest of all time, hands down, no questions asked. But this isn't the Mike of old. This Mike is old, yeah? That is a bar right there. Bash! He's 58 years old, man. He's 58 years old. And even at 58 years old, Mike could still beat up 99.99% of the world's population, myself included. And whilst Jake Paul is nowhere near the level of a prime Mike Tyson in his prime, and if we were to have a prime Tyson versus a prime Jake Paul, Tyson would fucking decimate him. At some point, age has to come into the conversation. And whilst I think Tyson will be very dangerous in there for the first round or two, as the fight goes on, if Jake has a good enough gas tank, as Tyson starts to fade, he can then start to kind of gain momentum in the fight. So I only see this really going one way. Will I watch it? Probably. Probably. Just because it will be such a spectacle. But equally, what the hell do I know? Both men are going in there and getting paid tens of millions of pounds. So good luck to them. I just think you should leave Uncle Mike alone, man. He's done enough for the sport. He is a legend. I don't want to see anything bad happen to him in the ring. But will I be watching? Yeah, I probably will. But I think we should just leave the legend and the GOAT that is Mike Tyson alone, man. If he goes in there and absolutely chins Jake Paul, I take it all back. I take it all back. Stranger things have happened. On the undercard, we also have the rematch between Katie Taylor and Amanda Serrano, who had an absolute scrap the last time they fought in 2022. An absolutely historic event to headline the legendary Madison Square Garden, and was and still is the biggest women's boxing fight of all time. Being named Fight of the Year by Sports Illustrated and Event of the Year by the Ring magazine, Taylor defeated Serrano just by split decision, with a lot of people saying that it could have gone either way. Very excited to see that fight again. As we all know, it looks like AJ versus Dubois, the rematch, will not be taking place next, with Dubois wanting to fight again in February, and AJ seeming to need a bit more time off before he gets back into the ring. It looks like AJ is going to be waiting to see the result of Fury Usyk, and regardless of whether Fury wins or loses, they'll be targeting the Fury AJ fight. I've said it before and I'll say it again. I want to see that fight. I don't care if both men are coming off multiple losses. I don't care if it's for a belt or a title. I don't care. I just want to see the fight. And whilst it will never be what it could have been, when it would have been for Undisputed, I still want to see the fight. This is where it gets interesting though, right? Because if Fury does win, then surely the logical next fight would be the Usyk trilogy. If both Usyk and Fury are one apiece, and it's 1-1, then surely it makes sense to have that third decider. So if that does happen, then AJ's got a fight in the interim, surely. And if that's not going to be against Dubois, then who's that going to be against? Lots of talk potentially about doing a Wilder AJ fight, with both men coming off losses. With AJ seemingly not going to be ready for the February date, who will Dubois fight? There was, of course, huge news with the IBF giving permission for Dubois to make a voluntary defense of the IBF belt against Fabio Wardley. With outlets just spreading that like wildfire, it looked like that would be the next fight. Fabio Wardley, of course, straight away on the Instagram comment saying, "Call me." But Frank has recently come out in a recent interview and said that they will not be targeting that fight next. And it makes sense, right? I must admit, I thought it was a bit strange if they did go down that route, purely because from like a promotional perspective, Frank promotes both guys. And so I know from his perspective, right, either way he wins, right? Either way he comes away with a heavyweight champion. But for me, it would make sense to build both guys up separately a bit more and then have them both collide together, if possible, later on down the line in a big kind of showdown when both guys are at their very best and at the heights of what they can reach commercially as well. And whilst I'm sure both men would be bang up for that fight, I think it makes sense to put that one on the back burner and see that one in the future. And so when looking at who Dubois' next opponent could be, you look down the top 15 in the IBF rankings, and number 1 and number 2 you've got not rated, which is interesting. Then you've got Ajit Kabayel and Martin Bakole in the 3rd and 4th spot, who of course have been announced to be fighting each other next for a final eliminator for the IBF mandatory position. So you look further down the list and you've got Zhilei Zhang at number 5, which would make sense. He's had some really good wins recently against Joe Joyce and Wilder, with a lot of people feeling like he won against Hrgovic when they fought, with a loss of course to Joseph Parker recently. And then at number 6 you've got Frank Sanchez, who of course lost to Ajit Kabayel. And then number 7, you've got F.A. Ajagba, and number 8, Anthony Joshua, and then Philip Hrgovic, Chisora, etc., etc. Why not Joseph Parker? Now, I know he's not currently ranked by the IBF, but sanctioning body politics aside, he's the guy who deserves it the most, right? With 2 fantastic recent wins against Deontay Wilder and Zhilei Zhang. Giving Zhang a shot at the title before Parker, given that Parker's beat him, just because he's ranked, is just crazy to me, personally. But sanctioning body politics are sanctioning body politics, right? If I was a conspiracy theorist, and I put my tin hat conspiracy theory hat on momentarily, why are number 1 and 2 on the list currently not rated? Could that be, again, wearing my conspiracy theory hat, because they're leaving that open for someone like a Joseph Parker? Who knows? Personally, I think that's the fight. Sanctioning body politics aside for a moment, Joseph Parker, in my eyes, has done enough to be at that top contender spot. And with Ajit Kabayel and Martin Bakole already locked up in a fight to decide who would become the mandatory challenger for Daniel Dubois, and Joseph Parker already having a win over the next guy in the rankings, Zhilei Zhang, then surely it makes sense to make that fight. Who knows? We'll have to wait and see. The heavyweight landscape at the moment is just so interesting, isn't it? It's absolutely full to the brim of killers at the moment. We've had some huge upsets in the division this year. Bakole Anderson, Chisora Joyce, and obviously more recently, Dubois AJ. It's just absolute fucking scenes, lads, isn't it? And it will be interesting to see how over the next 6 to 12 months it continues to develop as we have these fights, and who the top contenders are that emerge from each of these fights. Ben Whittaker has broken his silence, sharing a clip from the Will Ferrell movie, The Ballad of Ricky Bobby, seemingly joking around about the legitimacy and the seriousness of his injury, ending that with "back soon, don't worry, get back, gonna be amazing." So presumably, health-wise, he's getting into a situation where he'll be okay to fight, and I guess we'll wait and see who the return will be against. In my opinion, it has to be against Liam Cameron. I think there's unfinished business there for both men, and I think we've got to see how that one plays out. What is next for Jack Catteral after defeating Regis Prograis the other week? Jack absolutely deserves a title shot, in my opinion. Devin Haney has come out and said that he fancies that fight. His dad, Bill Haney, saying that that fight in the UK makes the most sense. Obviously, that wouldn't be for a world title, as Devin Haney, I believe, is currently the WBC junior welterweight champion in recess. But hey, Devin's a huge name. If it's not for a title, then Jack certainly deserves to be getting a big payday. And I think that fight could sell out an arena here in England. That's a big potential commercial matchup for him. Obviously, Haney's looking for a way back in after the Garcia fight, and so that gives him an opportunity to get back up there. Another option, of course, is Teofimo Lopez, who is currently the WBO champion. Both fighters have a win over Josh Taylor, and that would be a tremendous fight. The other option, of course, is he fights the winner of Liam Pyro and Richard Hitchens, who are fighting for the IBF strap in December. And with Liam, Richard, and Jack all being under Matchroom and Eddie Hearn, that would be a really easy fight to make. And so if nothing can come of the Teofimo and Devin Haney situations, then I reckon that's probably the next fight for Jack. Regardless, man, I just want to see Jack in big fights, earning big money and fighting for belts now. He deserves it, he really does. Hall of Fame and legendary promoter Don King appeared recently in a video on social media posted by Mauricio Solomon, president of the WBC, saying that given the 50-year anniversary of the Rumble in the Jungle taking place against George Foreman and Muhammad Ali, the big man that you might see in the background there, the legend himself, taking place in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, celebrating the 50th anniversary. Don King came out in the video saying that he wants to make the Rumble in the Jungle too, which is very interesting. Of course, that opens a conversation around which fighters that would involve. Given that Don King's referring to another heavyweight showdown in the Congo, the most obvious name to throw in that conversation is Martin Bakole. He's from the Democratic of the Congo and has reportedly been given backing by the Congolese government to host a fighting event there, previously targeting a fight against AJ in the Congo. That would be pretty massive, right? Perhaps that could be AJ's next fight, right? Maybe he's going out to the Congo to fight big Martin Bakole. I know AJ previously spoke about it in the run-up to the Dubois fight. Who knows? It will certainly be interesting to see how that story develops, regardless of who it involves. I think what's bigger news is that Don King is still going. He's 93 years of age, ladies and gentlemen. Absolutely insane. Fair play to him. Like Bob Arum, you know, he's 92, right? I mean, these guys are 92 and 93, and they're both in such good condition for their age and running around and in such a stressful position as a boxing promoter. Maybe that's the secret. Maybe that's their secret, right? Maybe boxing is keeping them young. Moving on to the MMA world. The big news, of course, is Belal Muhammad has pulled out of UFC 310 with a nasty toe and bone injury. I won't put it on screen. You can Google it if you're so inclined. Will they make another fight the main event? Alexandre Pantoja's defense of his flyweight championship could be the new main event. Or potentially, they'll look to give Rakhmonov a new opponent in an interim title match. Equally, there are also rumours that Alex Pereira might be stepping in to save the day yet again and defending his UFC light heavyweight title against Magomed Ankalaev. He has saved a UFC event before, so he could definitely do it again. Pereira versus Ankalaev would be an absolute banger. Both men, of course, have fought recently as well. And so although it would be short notice, both men should be in fairly decent shape. Shavkat, of course, is calling for a replacement opponent, calling for an interim title fight, with Belal being against the idea. If they were to give Shavkat an interim title fight, who would he fight and who would be available? The number one contender in the welterweight ranking is, of course, Leon Edwards, who lost to Belal in a massive upset earlier this year in July, with Belal interrupting his 13-fight unbeaten streak. Undoubtedly, Leon is still one of the best fighters in the world. And if he's fit and ready, he'd be an excellent replacement. And if he were to win against Rakhmonov, that would set him up for redemption against Belal. Another potential opponent for an interim title fight could be Kamaru Usman, who is one of the greatest welterweights of all time. And despite being inactive since October of last year, when stepping up as a late replacement for Khamzat Chimaev and coming up short, he could be a great shout as well. I guess we'll have to wait and see what they do with that card. In other news, Michael Venom Page has called out Shara Bullet following Shara's spectacular knockout victory over Armen Petrosan, winning by knockout with a sensational double back fist in the immediate aftermath of his win on UFC 308. He called out Izzy Adesanya in the cage, with Michael Venom Page coming out and saying, "Hey, leave my boy Izzy alone. I want the smoke instead." MVP, in a recent interview with Mike Heck of MMA Fighting on SBN, said the following about Shara Bullet. Then he called out my boy Izzy, "Mate, I'm at that weight right now. You don't even have to wait too long. That one there, I'll just take straight away for the fun of it." Heck asked if MVP would be willing to move to 185 pounds to fight the undefeated middleweight Shara, to which MVP replied, "That's what I'm grappling at right now, so I'm in shape now, ready to go. So that's a good fight for me, I think. You know, just a nice stand-up fight for everybody, just to come back to the game." That would be an absolutely fantastic scrap, and one that I absolutely want to see. So hopefully we can see that being next for both men. Anyways, guys, that is everything for today. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that. Just something different that I'm trying. I think this will end up being a fairly regular feature on the channel. I'm not sure how often we'll do it, but you know, once a week, once every 2 weeks, once every so often, we'll do one of these videos where we kind of talk through a load of different topics and headlines. Let me know your thoughts on this type of format below. Smash that like button for me. Hit subscribe if you are new. It helps the channel out massively. Comment your thoughts on any of the topics that we've spoken about today below. I want to hear your thoughts, and I will catch you guys on the next one.